So today I'm having the pleasure of interviewing and having a chat with my old mate Robert Poyton out of the UK. We go back many years. Rob now part of the and the curator of the Cutting Edge Systema. Would that be correct?
That's correct, sir. Yep.
Right. And so I wanted to take some time to go back in history to kind of get some of his experience and the martial arts, and then come touch base on to where things are now, and touch base on some of the hot topics that we come across, and some of the formats we're in, and some of the martial arts that we practice. All right. So, Rob, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well, thank you, sir. It's nice to see you. Yeah, it's been a while, isn't it?
Oh man, it's been about at least it's close to 20, maybe 15 plus years, man, since we
Tell
actually
me.
been in person with each other, man. So it's been quite a while.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
very thankful for social media to keep us in touch, man.
Oh, it's been great, isn't it? You just chat to people all around the world. I was saying, I use it a lot for podcasts and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, sometimes when technology works, it's a great thing,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly that. Exactly that. Yeah, man. So obviously I know a bit of your history already, but what I like for you to do is kind of let's take me back, man. Take me back to first, I guess what sparked your interest in the martial arts, and then what was your first kind of introduction into the arts?
Okay, well, we go all the way back to the 1960s.
Excellent, excellent.
I can't believe it. Yeah, well, I was born in 1963 in East London, and
Wow. Okay.
I suppose I had quite a normal upbringing for the time and place, but looking back and when you speak to other people after, it was quite a rough area. When you grow up in stuff, you just take everything for granted, you know.
Sure thing.
Yeah.
So, what part of London? Because obviously I'm familiar with the UK. I've spent like like 10 plus years there. So yeah.
All right. Well, I was actually born in West Ham by
West End.
Forest Gate, West Ham.
West Ham. I was about to
Yeah.
stop saying West End boys.
Oh yeah. East End girls. Yeah, yeah.
East
So
End girls.
yeah, I grew up around sort of Stratford, Forest Gate, Manor Park, those sort of areas.
Excellent, excellent.
My family was all from that area going back, going back a fair way actually.
Nice.
Um, yeah, and it was, my mum and dad worked hard. We never really wanted for anything, but we didn't have the latest bike and the latest trainers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
fair enough. Yes.
and if you did have anything nice, someone else usually nicked it off you. So,
I'll take that. Yes.
yeah. So I guess it was partly because of that it was actually my dad when I was about 6 or 7 took me to a local judo club
Oh, sweet. Okay.
in East Ham. I don't really remember much about it, to be honest.
Okay.
Um, and also just after that, I did some boxing as well, which
Oh,
is,
nice.
yeah, it's pretty much compulsory in the East End, right? Everyone boxes in the East End.
Get
Uh,
those Lonsdale's hands. Yeah.
yeah, Peacock Gym and all that stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that was, I suppose, an early introduction, and that was already then from the point of view of self-defense, because
Nice.
your dad wants to teach you to look after yourself, and I think alongside that, what I learned from quite an early age was strategies to deal with things.
Ah, sweet.
You learn different routes to school, perhaps, to avoid the guy who's going to
Yeah.
take your dinner money. Uh, and you start forming gangs, so you go around, there'll be a group of you and you'll look out for each other, all that kind of
Right on.
stuff. Um, so that was there. The big things in my house with my parents were reading, music, and football.
Right
Uh,
on. Right on.
so the sport was a very big influence at an early age. But having said that, I wasn't really into sport that much. I've never been a very competitive person, you
Yeah,
know.
but you kept the music. I know that for sure.
Yes, and the books, funnily enough, and the reading, as it turns out later on. So
Excellent.
yeah, that was the earliest days, and then I remember seeing on television the Kung Fu series. So
Hmm.
I think that started early 70s,
Right
72,
on. It did.
73, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
David Carradine, Kwai Chang Caine, and something about it fascinated me that this guy
Excellent.
was so calm, and he'd go all the way through. not going to fight, not going to fight, not going to fight. And then, of course, at the end, he kicks the ass of 8 people with style, you know.
Style, yeah.
Yeah, so that was fascinating. And I think as well, what that show did get right, because later we find out about David Carradine and, you know,
Yeah.
okay, all right, we'll put that to one side.
Right,
But showing the philosophy of the Shaolin Temple and the temple scenes, that
sure.
was very interesting as well.
Right,
So
right.
that showed that like practical side, if you like, but also this other side of the philosophy, and I suppose the culture as well.
Yeah, fair enough. Definitely that. Definitely that. So, did you start taking it serious around that time as well, or you just got it just grew your interest?
No, I started looking, so I guess by this age I would have been 13, 14.
Hmm.
But really all there was around at the time was karate,
Oh, okay.
which kind of it never really appealed to me so much. I don't know why. You know, nothing against it. In fact, as we'll say later on, I've got some friends who were very into karate. Uh, and we had people around then like Tiki Donovan and I think it was the KUGB and, you know, real
Yeah,
tough Shotokan style and all that sort of thing. Uh,
sure.
but also at that age, I had to have some operations on my feet. I had some issues. So
Okay,
that could sort of put me out of doing anything really for a little
sure.
while as well. And then it would have been about 1980, I guess. I saw an advert in the local paper, well, two adverts in the same paper,
Yeah.
Tai Chi Chuan and Wing Chun classes, both
Oh,
local.
oh, sweet, sweet.
Wow, Kung Fu, because,
Yeah.
you know, pre-internet, there's nothing, right? There's no,
Right on.
there's two books in the library on karate. That's it. That's it. So I suppose unless you went up to sort of Chinatown
Uh-huh.
and could read Chinese, you had very little chance of finding this stuff. So
Right on.
I sent off for the information on both, and the Tai Chi one come back, and it turned out it was Chu King Hung's organization, which I
Oh
think
wow.
was the ITCCA, I think it was
That's
back
it.
then.
Yeah, yes, yes. Uh-huh.
And I have to say, I was quite impressed. You got all these sheets of paper, and it had all the history of the Yang family and some photos. And you do this, and then you learn the sword, and then you get tested. And if you pass, you learn this and that. You know, it all sounded really good. So me and my brother went along to the next session. It was just like a bus ride away.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and that turned out to be with John Ding. And we
Oh,
were
yes.
yeah, we were in his very first class. It was just as he started teaching.
Oh man, how awesome is that? That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So, so was your brother just as interested, or was he tagging along because you were going, or how did that connection together with your brother go?
Oh yeah, he did it. He did it for a while, and he still sort of maintains half an interest, but he kind of dropped out a little earlier than me. I think I'm probably ADHD or something. I'm very if I get into something, you know, that's
Relate.
it. Yeah,
Yes.
right. We no one was testing us back in those days. You know,
Right
you were just
on.
like sit in the corner kind of thing, you know. But
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
yeah.
but and I suppose because I had this earlier interest in it, then I thought, wow, and in quite a naive way, of course, because
Sure, sure.
all that mystique is attached to it as well. And the fact that John Ding he had experience in praying mantis and Shaolin Kung Fu as well. So that was like the
Oh,
magic word. Shaolin. He knows Shaolin, you know.
yes, that buzzword.
Right.
Yes.
Which he was still teaching sort of on the side as well.
Okay,
Uh
okay.
yeah, so that was the very first, I guess, serious martial arts experience, you know.
How interesting is that? So obviously, like you said, you're part of his first classes and things like that. Um, you know, was your introduction into a what we would consider like a full system of Tai Chi, or we just started going into form? Were you doing any kind of applications or anything of that nature? How was that experience going in there the first time?
It felt very old school in that
Okay.
the class was the same each time.
Hmm.
Uh, you start with your exercises, you do your standing, you do your form, you do your stance work, you do pushing hands, you do application.
Okay,
Uh,
excellent. Okay.
and it was quite like, you know, the stance work was like 20 minutes, kind of all
Yeah.
that, you know, you
Yes, sir.
like, you know, shaky legs, sweating, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right
So,
on.
you know, in a lot of ways, that was a good grounding.
Right
Um,
on.
looking back in later years, of course, I can pick holes in that and say we didn't do any stretching, we did nothing about how to fall properly and various other things. But at the time, I was just happy I was learning kung fu from a
Exactly.
Shaolin guy kind of thing, you know.
Right on, right
And
on.
we're all doing this and we're all doing that and we're doing this. And it just felt good.
Excellent. And were you going directly into the traditional Yang form? So were you practicing?
Yeah, yeah. So this was Chu King Hung was the third disciple of Yang Style Taijiquan
Right.
from Hong Kong. So this was direct young family lineage.
Excellent,
Uh,
excellent. Yes.
and at the time, it was still very much concerned with application. It was taught as a martial art. Very much.
Right. Right. Excellent, excellent. So very typical, right? No mats in class, correct?
No
Just
mats.
hard
No.
floor and yeah, going through
Yeah.
form and applications and things of that nature. Okay, cool
Yeah.
beans. Now, was John big into working with you guys directly, or how was he? How was his teaching style? What was his teaching style like?
At that time, yeah, it was fine. You know, again, it felt very old school. You do your starts, you get your corrections, you go through the form, there's corrections, then it'd say, right, this is if you punch here, you do this, and then you do this, and all that kind. Right, and then we practice that in pairs. Uh,
Right, right.
I have to
Drills.
say, a big part of my development back then as well was there was a group of us used to get together on a Monday night
Mm-hmm.
in a gym in a mental asylum.
The irony, right?
uh, one of the guys, Ducian, was a ward and orderly at a local mental hospital, Claybury Hospital. It's a big local landmark.
Yeah.
And Monday night we used to go in the gym there, and that was mostly people who trained with John Ding. Some Tai Chi, some of the Shaolin and Mantis guys, and now and again we get other guys come in from different things, and we'd basically bash the crap out of each other, trying to learn how to put all this stuff together. Because all of those guys, we were all from a similar background.
Sure.
You know, we were all out of the East End, and we wanted to know, well, right, so if someone throws a hook, what do you do? Does this, no, that didn't work, right? Well, let's try it this way. You know,
Right on, right on.
very crude, probably. We didn't have, we were using like cricket gear, you know, for
Oh yes, of course.
protection
For
and
the
all this.
padding, yes.
Yeah. But
and
it was good stuff. Yeah.
that's interesting because I was going to ask about that. So, like, what was the community like as far as the the martial arts community and the Tai Chi community for you guys back then? Like, because at some point in time, I know there was very segmented. Like, don't go learn from that teacher, don't go to this teacher. But how was that community? What was that community like during that time frame?
We didn't really see too much of outside. I mean, amongst ourselves on that Monday night, whoever came in, if they had a decent attitude, and one or two people didn't, right, then you were welcome. So we had guys who did Kyoku Shinkai or were jujitsu guys, you know, so
Oh,
we
interesting.
mixed up. As long as everyone was all right, we were all right.
Okay.
Um, Outside of that, we never really saw any other clubs except when we went to workshops with Chu King Hung up at his
Right. I got
London
you.
place. And I know
Yeah.
Dave was speaking about this before. So we were in the same room at the same time, right?
Yeah.
At least a couple of occasions. And of course, we didn't know each other
Each
or
other.
anything.
Yeah.
So when he
That's
was
so
saying, "Oh
funny.
yeah, Jim Uglow doing," oh yeah, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you know, that's quite funny hearing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Rekindling the memories. And yeah, that's interesting because, I think, a lot of times, you see people in those environments and, you're so focused on what you're trying to learn. And, you do meet people and network with people, but you don't really kind of understand that process and that progress is going to be later on down the road. Like, hey man, we're learning the same stuff, and how you kind of picked up the information, and then what you find out later on is like, oh, when I was doing it, we kind of worked on this, and now you're kind of comparing notes later in life and things like
Yeah,
that, and seeing
yeah.
some of the things you had in common, and some of the things that like, oh, I didn't learn that from them. I didn't know that this was going on, that kind of stuff, man. So it's very very interesting that you guys had that path.
Totally. And again, of course, pre-social media, you can't, now it'd be, oh, what's your email? Or have you got a website? Or,
Yeah,
back
yeah.
then, I mean, you had a phone, you didn't have a mobile phone, right?
You right on.
It was-
Well, eventually in the '90s, yeah, we did eventually get that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I remember the big old long Motorola I used to have when I first got one. Yeah, yeah, that was hilarious. Yeah. So was John a proponent for competitions, or did he steer away from that for the most part?
No, it was never really something that came up, to be honest. Obviously, with my karate friends and those sort of guys, they were doing a fair bit of that stuff. For me, it was never something I was particularly interested in. I said I've never really been that competitive a person,
Right,
and
right.
my thing at the time was if I want to fight, I can go anywhere and get a fight. You know, it was very
Fair enough.
easy
That is
to get
very true.
in East
Yes, I
London at that
know.
time. There was, so much stuff going on, and I mean, right. So there was stuff going on like the football, right, in the 70s
Yes.
and the 80s. So
In the 90s.
I'll say my brother, I was on the edges of that. My brother was quite involved and still is to some extent.
Yeah.
Then we had all the things like you had casuals and punks and skinheads and mods and rockers. There was all that stuff going on. A lot of politics. We
Yes.
had the National Front trying to march around the
Right on.
post
Yeah.
and all that
Yeah.
sort of
I
thing. So
remember that.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So it was a lively time. So to me, to go and have a fight as a hobby was not really something that attracted me, I guess.
I
Not that
got
I've
you. I
got
got you.
anything against it or anything.
No, no, no worries, no worries. Yeah, because I think more so leading up to my next question is as how did you guys test out your skills and abilities and give you some kind of sense of practicality in that regard? What were you guys using as a sort of like a metric for that, if you
Just going out on a Friday night and a Saturday night, to be honest. And
Let's go give it a go. Yeah.
yeah, just shit happening, really. I mean, right. So I was having a chat with one of my lads the other day, and he said, "Oh, I want to go down to London, take the kids down to London, take them to the museums and all that kind of thing, have a day out." He said, "But my wife doesn't want to go because she's scared we'll get stabbed." And I was
Oh,
saying to him, "Listen, London now is far less violent than it used to be. I know there's this knife issue in certain places
areas.
and
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
but no, it's nothing like it used to be, really.
No, not at
I
all, man.
mean,
Not at all. I mean, you brush shoulders. I remember. So I got to England in '89. So I remember going to London, like the late '89, early '90s. And just brushing shoulders with folks. Like, what you want? You on? Oh, like,
yeah,
oh, dude, like Jesus Christ, man! It's
yeah.
just like an accident.
We used to call it the Stratford Pub Quiz. Question one, right? Question one,
Yeah,
what are you looking at? Question
yeah.
question two, do you want some? Question three, who do you think you are? I mean, this, like you say, literally you brush past someone and this was going on. And of course, at times, and I'm not saying I'm proud of it or it's a good thing, but we go out looking for stuff, groups of us, and there was mods and there was skinheads and all that stuff going on. So
Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah,
youthful silliness, but you learn some
yeah.
things. And then I did start doing some door work a bit later on. Uh, well, I packed in my first job to go into music full time because I was in a band at the time.
Right, right.
So I thought, right, I'm going to be a pop star. Let's do working. And of course, it was going okay, but money's tight. So my brother started DJing about the same time. So I
Awesome.
started doing door work with my brother
Yeah.
for some other people around the East End and also up the West End as well.
Uh-huh.
So that's a big learning curve, right?
Yeah, it is.
But I was kind of taken under the wing of some people, shall we say, and I learned a lot through that as well. I did learn a hell of a lot doing that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we have our own kind of elements and ways people and the social element of clubbing here in the U.S. But obviously, I think I know I was 18, 19 when I first got there, and I ended up coming back to the States when I was 31. But
Wow.
I do know that it's a more personal environment because the gun culture is not the same in the UK.
Yeah.
So you really have to be up for something working the door because the guys comes in groups, and either they're looking for ladies or they're looking to get really pissed and then
Yeah.
let the funds begin.
Yeah, so it was very interesting, and of course, you learned very quickly how to handle people, not just physically.
Right.
You know, there was they had the big lump, right? You'd always have the big lump stood there, the bodybuilder guy, and all that sort of thing. But to be honest, the most effective ones were the ones who could talk well and knew how
Right
to
on.
handle people. Uh,
Yes, yes.
but you also had to have a very good awareness of who you were talking to and where they were from,
Of
you
course.
know, because it was yeah, yeah,
It makes a difference. It makes a difference.
mm.
So as you're getting your experience working in that environment, how was that tangent to what you guys were developing? I guess your progress within your Tai Chi, because obviously, as you mentioned, you're getting your tuition from John Ding directly, and then you're now having exposure to Chuking Hung. So how is that kind of playing a role into you're really kind of grasping onto your martial prowess, I guess, if you will.
It started to change things in some ways, I think, because you start to question. Well, I've always been a questioner anyway, and of
Sure.
course, that's not always appreciated. I mean, it depends how people ask questions, right? So, I
Sure.
mean, I mean, now I love it. I start every session, whatever I'm doing, with, "Has anyone got any questions?"
Right on.
Because I
Same
like
here.
it when people say, "Oh, come here," and then right, there's my class for the day. So,
Exactly.
um, so there was that, and that was alleviated a bit by the fact we were getting together on a Monday night and we were free to try out whatever we wanted. But then it
Sure.
started becoming more and more apparent within the school that this wasn't really the way things were going to be developing within the club.
Sure.
Uh, we used to do a lot of demos and that sort of thing, and it really started growing. I mean, there was like, I don't know how many sessions a week. I was an assistant instructor by this time, so
Oh
there
wow.
was a
Okay.
few of us helping out in the classes. Eventually, then start teaching my own class. Uh, and I think the big change was when Dean got his full-time place, full-time school, which is still there, I think, in South Woodford. And of course, the Monday night crew, when we were in the class, at some point we'd get the mats out and off we'd go. And he called us over one night and he said, "Don't do that anymore."
Oh wow.
"What do you mean?" So don't get the mats out. Don't do that. You're scaring some of the other people.
Oh, I see. I
Okay,
see.
okay. So there's one little light goes on, right? One little red light.
Yeah.
uh, the second one came when a guy came in who was obviously a judo guy, quite an
Mhm.
older, experienced guy. Now, we'd have people come in all the time, and some wanted to test and some wanted to join in. So normally, of course, as the assistant instructor, I'm sent to deal with those. And, okay, that's fine. Um, this guy was very determined to have it with John. Uh, and he did. And he ended up on the floor, putting him in a rear naked chokehold, and that was that. Right.
Wow.
And it
Wow.
was one
Wow.
of those, tumbleweed moments.
Yes.
The rest of the class is like, I could see what was happening. It was like, what the fuck's going on here? you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Uh, and Ding sort of laughed it off and said, "Oh yeah, that was fun. Of course, if I'd have hit you properly, then." And the guy was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, yeah, thanks very much. See ya." So
Right
there's
on.
another little light goes on.
Sure thing. Sure
And
thing.
I'm not saying a teacher has to be invincible or anything else, because we can all get caught out. There's always
Right on.
someone better, but it's more the way you handle that. Uh, and I guess
Indeed.
coming from that sort of, if you like, that door background and how you deal with people, and especially when there's conflict involved, I thought that was very interesting. The
Yes, sir.
way he didn't handle it, perhaps.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Now, did John ever speak prior to that of his martial background at all, or did he ever even go down that lane of discussion, if you will?
Not really. I wouldn't say he was secretive about it, but he just said, he started learning from when he was a kid, because he's from Malaysia. He's Chinese Malaysian.
Right.
So from Malaysia originally, and he grew up Shaolin Tamtoy, all those sort of forms, and into Mantis. We did find out, or I did find out later on, a couple of things about him when I went and trained with Jim Uglow, because
Hmm.
they were contemporaries under Chu. Uh,
Sure.
not very far apart geographically. Jim was just down the road, but they
Yeah.
they didn't get on.
As it goes.
Yeah, and apparently Ding hadn't started training with Chu that long before he started teaching. So
Oh, interesting.
maybe at the time he was just 6 months or a year ahead of us.
Oh,
Right.
okay. Well, he goes, wow, I know more than what you guys know. So,
Well, yeah, which again is fine. I don't have an issue with that as long as it's, you're not pretending to be something else. That's great. That's fine. Look, I've just started, but let's start up a group. And yeah, great. Okay.
yeah, and that was a question I was going to ask you when you were mentioning about when you became like an assistant instructor. Like, you know, generally speaking, most Tai Chi schools or organizations don't have any kind of belt system or system of progression.
Mm.
So I was going to ask, what was he using as a metric to say, okay, now you're ready to kind of step forward into that role?
I guess part of it. I mean, always think this is an interesting thing with martial arts in terms of people say, you have to choose the most deserving student and people have to test themselves and all that kind of thing, right?
Uh-huh.
Uh, Often it's just the guy who's turned up the most for the longest.
That's
you,
true.
you can't reward the guy you haven't seen for 6 months, right? But the guy who's there every week, presuming they're not they're all right and they're
Yeah.
so in one sense it was me kind of pushing because again I thought this traditional thing you have to get close to the teacher, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You put in your time and all that stuff, and then at some point so shall I start teaching and helping out, and so that kind of there were three of us. There was Gordon and John as well, so there were like three of us doing
Okay.
that, and then eventually going out to teach our own classes. So
Indeed.
there is that. Then there's the financial aspect, of course.
Yeah.
And you know where that's going, right?
Right on, I do. That's too funny. So, did you feel fairly confident when you started going into that role? Did you feel like you had? I mean, let me phrase this question like this more so. So you're in that role as assistant, instructor, if you will, and then you saw the scenario that unfolded when the judo player in there. Now, keeping in mind also you've had your work in the door experience. Did it alter what you thought about yourself or your level of martial prowess once you saw that result with John based on your own experience and things?
I think to some extent, yeah, again, you question what you're learning, but then having had that outside experience as well, I was reasonably confident. I mean, as confident as you can be without being, you know, and to be honest, as Tai Chi began to change at that time, so when I started teaching, I had some very nice people when I was teaching out in Brentwood, which is out in
Okay.
Essex. It's a nice town,
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
Um, so I wasn't dealing with the same sort of people I would have been dealing with if I'd have been teaching in Stratford or somewhere like that.
Right on, right on.
Um, so in those circumstances, it's easy to be, Billy Big Bollocks, right?
Right
Because
on, indeed.
you can do this and you can push people and they go, oh wow, that's amazing, and
Yes. Of course, of course. Yeah.
So there was an element of that, and maybe I started falling into that trap a bit as well. To be honest,
Sure, of course, of
you
course.
don't really get so challenged, uh, and you're in control in the class the whole time because we've
Yeah.
got this syllabus and we've got this structure. And if we're doing pushing hands, well, I tell you how to do it, right? Or if
Yes.
it's an application, well, you punch me here, right? And I
Hmm.
and I do this. So you're kind of in control all the time
Indeed, indeed.
until I had a guy come along one day called Rob Murray, and we became great friends. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. He's a big Irish fella, Rob,
Uh-huh.
very experienced in jiu-jitsu and old school karate. So he was one of that old school karate. I think he trained under a guy called Peter Spanton, who was very
Okay.
old school Wadu Ryu.
Oh,
And
whatever you do. Yes.
and Rob did the class because Rob would train in anything. you know,
Yeah.
he'd try anything. And he sort of hung around at the end. So I was having a chat with him and he said, "Oh, this Tai Chi, yeah, it's pretty good stuff, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah." And I don't know how it came about, but we ended up in a tussle.
Uh-huh.
And for the first time in my life, well, I guess when I done judo, it must have happened. But the first time as an adult, he picked me up above his head and then just put me very gently on the floor. And I went, "Fuck." What happened to my routing?
Yeah.
I can glue myself to the floor when I'm doing pushing hands, and so that was a real good wake up.
Yes,
And
yes.
by this time, I was living in North London. I'd moved up to Tottenham. I
Okay.
was living
Tough.
around there, and Rob just happened to live down the road in Stamford Hill. So
Uh-huh.
he started training with me, and then twice a week I go to his house. He had a basement gym set up, and
Nice.
we'd try, you know, all this stuff out. So it was a bit like that Monday night group again.
Right
Uh,
on, right on.
very intense, you know, 200 kicks on the bags, 3 minute rounds on the pads, all that sort of stuff.
Awesome.
Then
Yeah, yeah.
he knew some Wing Chun. We got some army stuff going. We're working the Tai Chi in the Jiu Jitsu, you know.
Oh, sweet,
So
sweet, sweet.
I owe Rob a lot in my development. A great guy, great guy.
Oh man, that's awesome, man. So so did you reach out to other Tai Chi folks? I know you mentioned obviously your experience with Shu, and getting some of his workshop stuff, but was there a branch out there for you to reach out to try to get more deeper scope of what you thought maybe was missing from what you were getting in your tutelage already?
Not really, because the attitude at the school became very much this: you don't have any other teacher.
Mm.
One of the breaking points later on, just before I split, was I should be more important than your father. All
Oh
right.
wow. Yes.
Um, this was at a time when my mum was dying of cancer.
Oh,
So that's not a good thing to say to someone in that
for real,
situation,
for real.
right? So
Yes.
that was really just before the big split. Um, so no, there wasn't. I mean, what we did have at the time, we had all these martial art wars going on, the Wing Chun wars, the
Yes.
praying mantis wars, and then of course the Tai Chi wars, right? Because we had
Yes.
Chu King Hung and Dan Doherty, right?
Yes.
Yang
Yes. Yes.
Style versus Wu Dang, and of course we're also, don't talk to them, blah 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 blah, you know, all that.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And again, no internet or anything else, so you don't have contact. But I did go to the first British push hands competition.
Okay.
It was in West London somewhere. I can't remember exactly.
Uh-huh.
So the very first one where the guys were on a platform
Yes.
uh,
Yes. Yes.
and all that sort of stuff. So we went along to that, but Ding was very against us mixing with anyone else.
Interesting.
It was kind of funny because he sold us this attitude: if you have one teacher and you stick with them. But
Mm.
about that same time, he left Chu King Hung and went to another teacher. Right. So there's another little light on the board, right? What we're up to about 4 now, I think, you know.
Too funny. Too funny. Did you know
Yeah.
who he went with?
I'm sorry.
Do you know who the teacher that he went with after Chu? Do you know who
Oh,
he
he
went with?
went over to Boston to Chujin Soon, who was
Oh, okay,
the
okay. That's
second
right. That's right.
disciple.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
same family line, but of course, you know, they're all different, right? So
Yes, indeed. Yes,
yeah.
indeed.
So he bought Boston Chew over. That's when I first met Vincent Chew, his son. And
Right, right.
it's like we started learning again because the form was quite different. It was very precise, and we were introduced to like dynamic pushing hands and all
Interesting.
this kind of stuff as well.
Yeah.
Um, which was okay, I guess, because it was something new and different. You sort of, oh right, well, now we're doing it properly, right? So you get a
Sure.
bit of that. But the downside of that was Boston was very much into this bouncing people away with
Yes,
barely a
indeed.
movement, and then the no contact work, the empty full stuff.
Yes, 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 yes.
And I think what happened was, well, Ding saw this and thought, I'm a high level teacher now. I should be able to do this stuff as well. And of course, with that, you start veering away even more potentially from your application work, getting the mats out. a lot of rough blokes throwing each other around, right?
Yes.
You're appealing to a different crowd.
Right on.
So I think that's what he went for, and the training started changing a lot at the club at that stage.
Very interesting. Now, when it started to change, was it something that you grew more interested in, or you grew more skeptical about? What was your perspective on that?
Well, I've always hopefully been sort of fairly open-minded, you know. So okay, but what developed was a little group of people who would fly off at the merest touch,
Yeah.
or even a look sometimes. And half the lesson then became this stuff going on in a corner. So the teacher standing there and guy coming, boom, boom, oh, and all this sort of thing. So
Ah.
it's like, okay. Uh, one day in one class, he said to me, punch me in the stomach.
It's okay.
Okay. And you know, I probably couldn't hit that hard anyway,
Yeah.
but I made contact and his face. And I thought, oh shit, I've done something wrong here, you know. And it was, and then that was, you know, there's another little light goes. So
Number five.
we're kind of going like this all the time now. And I'm not saying I'm perfect model student or anything else. I'm sure, you know, if you speak to
Yeah.
people, then oh well, he did this and he did that. But anyway, um, and it just got to the stage where after class was just this clowning around, really.
Mm.
It was interesting for me to observe it from a psychological angle to see how this stuff works. That's something I've always been interested in. A little bit later on, I looked at mentalism and people like Darren Brown and NLP and all these things,
Yes.
see how people are influenced. And I've even tried it myself on some occasions, but then explained how I did it
Yes,
because,
yes.
you know, to see how people are easily manipulated in some situations.
Right on.
So yeah, it got to the stage where that was going on a lot, and then various other things were happening, and in the end, myself and the other two main instructors just split. That was
Right.
it. I
The big
didn't see any
split, as you say.
big
Yes.
splits. Yeah, the big schism.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, how was that kind of received, even by some of the students that remained? Did they just see you guys were just these, wild outliers, or did they any backlash or anything come along with that? Or extra, you're now excommunicated from the community in any way. Was that any part of it?
My own students all stayed with me, so that was nice.
Okay.
Because again, I guess their association with me as their teacher. Obviously, they go to workshops and everything, but they all stayed. I think I might have become something of a bogeyman or something within the club. I heard
Yeah.
rumors later that I was going to be coming down to their next demo and challenge someone to a fight and all this sort of stuff. I was, yeah, I couldn't give a shit. You know, if that's what you, I'll maintain that attitude. That if you're happy doing what you're doing, that's okay, that's fine. You know, but if you're going to start telling me about what I'm doing, then I'll have words. You know, we'll
Right.
talk about that. My thing is always, will show me. You know,
Right.
oh,
Yes.
your form is crap. Right, well, show me yours.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Right. So yeah, and certainly at some point, I can't remember exactly how it happened. I got in touch with Boston
Mhm.
and with Vincent in particular, and ended up getting Vincent over, as you know, on several occasions. So
Yes.
certainly it didn't affect that relationship at all.
Right on.
In fact, I think it may have, well, I shouldn't say because then I'm speaking, I don't really know, but I think maybe there was not good feeling there necessarily
Right.
between Vincent and other people, but you know.
Do you think it was a sense that you leaped over your teacher to get access that you weren't privy to yet because you need to go through the right channels or something of that nature?
Yeah, I suppose there was an aspect of that, and obviously that would have gone against this. You know, you only have one teacher and the loyalty and all that sort of thing. But I
Yeah.
didn't see that exhibited. So again, you're going to tell me something, but then do something different.
Yeah.
Why am I going to respect that?
Right,
Um,
right, right.
Yeah, and I think to some extent I still thought there was something in Tai Chi that I could really get from it.
Sure.
Um, but this was now the way to go. Uh, so yeah, I mean that was another few years with Vincent, I guess. But now, in that time, because I was a free agent, of course, I could go around and train with anyone and anything, which is
Yes.
pretty much what I did.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So, did you ever reach back to Chu King Hong at all? Like directly? Did you ever go back in that route for anything?
No, not really. I think by that time he'd gone more down that theatrical route of pushing a line of people. And again, it was all these chi demonstrations rather than doing anything, which I think was a shame because I think from what I hear from other people, he was quite a tough old bird, Chu, you
Right,
know.
right.
But I guess it's easier money, isn't it?
Yeah,
To
indeed,
to
indeed.
do
Yeah,
that.
because like you mentioned, like the psychology changes of the people that you get involved with. They're,
Mm,
you know, we see it even in modern day culture, modern day Tai Chi practice, even like on a bigger scale. But you get this cult following because
totally.
folks want that an attachment to something that they don't see it as necessarily feasible for themselves, but this one person can do it, and so therefore, only way I can get it is through this person, and what they say is golden, and this is the only path for that. And it's interesting how it grew more down that line
Yeah.
as people got more educated. You think it would be the opposite and more access to things, but you would think it would be the opposite, but it's not.
People became more attracted to the esoterics, I think. And I mean, I remember in the 90s, things like feng shui became very big in the UK. There was a couple of feng shui magazines, and it all
Yes.
got. Did you ever go to Neil's Yard in Covent Garden? I don't know if you ever saw
Yes.
that place, right?
Yes.
It all
Yes.
got very
Yes.
Neil's Yard, aromatherapy and feng shui, and
Right on.
you know,
Yes.
you got to face east when you do your brush knee push, and
Yes. 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 That's right. Exactly. Face to the sun. Yeah. Oh man,
yeah.
that is so funny. Yes.
Which I'm not against because, alongside of all of this, as I was doing all this martial arts training, I was looking into Buddhism and Taoism and Western
Same.
occultism and all sorts of different things because that was part of my interest as well.
Yeah, yes, indeed, indeed, man. Yeah, so that's very funny because even when practicing with Dave, and I had my other teacher Bob France. The difference between those two was just that. Bob was very esoteric, and Dave, of course,
Dave's the least esoteric bloke I've ever met, and I say that from a place of love.
right on, yeah. Which I guess kind of brings me because aside from I don't know if you ever knew this. How I first got introduced to you, funny enough, was not through Dave, but there was a book called, I believe it was called The Complete Book of Martial Arts.
Oh
Do you
God,
remember that?
I
You
do.
were featured
Yeah.
in there.
Oh my word. Yeah, I've forgotten about that.
Oh, sorry for the reminder. Yeah, but
Well, it's quite nice because even now, that's still out there, and it's quite nice to go in the bookshop and I'm with my wife and I see that there and I go, I'm on the cover of. Mhm. You know, Faye, I can't remember her surname. Faye, she put it together. EI, Japanese swords style
right.
lady, very nice.
Yes.
But she phoned me up and said, "We want to put Tai Chi in. Can you bring some of your old people down for a photo shoot?" I think old people look like my guys were like you, right? You know what our guys were like back then,
Yeah,
all in
yeah.
their 20s, 30s, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And I actually had a private student at the time, Kathy, a lovely old lady locally. So I took her along. So she's
Yeah.
in the book as well.
Right. Yes.
Because that was a perception of
Of course.
I think I took Steve along. We did I did some applications or something as well. But
Yeah.
it's one of those books. It's a coffee table book. It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So when Dave had mentioned, like, yeah, I'm starting to connect with another gang practitioner by the name of Robert Poyton, and it's like, I said, oh, that's the dude from the book.
see, it's interesting, isn't it? You're in a book, you're legitimate all of a sudden.
Right on, right on, right
Yeah.
on. Yeah, so that was kind of like my first perception of like, all right, I'm gonna meet somebody that's coming in from a book and things like that. But also Dave was like, yeah, this is another line of of the Yang style that's different than what we've already been doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and like you mentioned, bringing in stuff from Chugan Soon and those fellows and everything like that. But if you don't mind briefly, what was that rekindling like for you? Your connection with Dave, and because obviously I want to get into when you guys branched off altogether. So what was that like? What was that kind of like? What brought you guys together? That connective minds on the Yang style stuff.
We were chatting the other day about this because neither of us can remember where we first met.
Right. He even reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, do you remember
Yeah.
how me and Rob first got together?" I was
Yeah.
like, "No, I remember it, but that
Yeah.
what brought it happened." Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I can't remember why I've gone into the kitchen these days. So, right. It's a bit of a stretch, isn't it? Like 40 years or
Yeah.
whatever it was. Dave said it might have been at Oxford at one of the
The
weekends.
competition. I think you were doing a demo. I told him
Could have,
I
could have been
remember
a
you were
demo.
doing a demo there.
I know Dan had asked me to judge at that, and I did judge at it a few times and some other events as well.
Uh-huh.
Dan Doherty. So
Right.
maybe I was demoing there or judging there or something.
Yeah.
And somehow we met and chatted, and I guess we had that similar lineage, and we knew Jim Uglow and Jim Watson and Karel Scuba and all that sort of old Chuking all lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like we lived that close because I was in Peterborough at the time, and Dave
Yes,
was
you
up
were.
right in well, he was over across from York, like
Yeah.
right?
Homeless upon Spalding Moor is where he was. Yeah, just
Yeah,
outside
yeah,
York and things. Yeah.
yeah. So it was, we're both up and down the A1 sort of thing quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was great because I mean, Dave and I are different personalities in some ways, but I can't think it's that we've ever disagreed on martial arts. We've got
Right.
very much the same outlook. We might express it a little bit differently, of course, but
Of course.
we found that we were very much in step with martial arts, particularly Tai Chi.
Excellent, excellent. So, what was that comparison of notes like for you guys? Like as you said, you're very similar in your thoughts on the martial arts. Like because obviously you guys were in some vein seeking kind of the same kind of discovery, I guess, if you will. So,
Yeah.
kind of if you could speak on that a little bit, like what was that like for you guys?
So
Yeah.
we kind of started swapping things really and comparing notes. And I suppose because we had that Chu King Hung shared background, we were on a similar page to start. But then Dave also had his singing experience and his boxing experience, and I've been
Yeah.
doing these other things as well.
Right on.
And yeah, we just start comparing things. I think one thing that we worked out pretty quick was one of the secrets to Tai Chi is be strong.
Right. Yes.
And
how dare you say that though? But
I
yes.
know, I can hear people fainting as I speak. And I'm always reminded, Lenny McLean,
No,
the
I'm not. I
oh,
don't. I don't.
right. So he was a very famous bare knuckle fighter in East London in
Okay.
70s, 80s into the 90s. A monster of a man, right?
Mm,
And there's a great interview with him on YouTube, and they say,
okay.
"What's your advice to be a fighter?" And he says, "Be strong, be stronger than
Ah,
the other guy." And then he goes into the psychology of it as well. So then people say, "Oh, be strong, you relax, Tai Chi." Yeah, okay. So when you look at the chews, we've got sledgehammers, we've got iron shot puts, we've got 8 foot iron staffs, and all the rest of it. The dynamic
right.
pushing hands, they're working on
Yes.
strength
Right on.
and
Right
structure.
on.
I think Yang
Yes,
style in particular is very much about that structure. In
indeed.
fact, later on, and what I think now, I don't think it's a particularly soft style. Like there are softer styles. Let's put it like
Yes,
that.
I totally agree with you on that. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Yeah, that was definitely something that I think that changed the whole kind of the paradigm. When we started to kind of really kind of like focus on like, all right, what's the core training of all this? Forms definitely want them to be accurate and great. But what should the body be like? You know what I mean?
Yes.
What
Yeah.
should the body be like? And that definitely switched things up for us in a lot of ways. So, you know, we,
Even the forms, right? Because when you see, let's take the Chen Man Ching, kind of pung, this sort of thing. And then even when you look at old photos of Yang Chen Fu from when he was younger, or certainly the Boston, you get
The big openness. Yes.
Yeah, even if it's small frame, there's this strength to it, right? It's
Yes,
not.
sir.
It depends on what you're doing the form for, of course, because as we know, you can do the form for several different reasons, but you have to have an understanding of why you're doing it.
Right on.
So now I teach form for health. So our focus is on the flow of movements, but with yin yang in the hands, because there's the expression, right?
Right on.
So it's a very nice way of getting people into the flow state.
Yes.
If you're teaching form for application, then you've got to have that structure in place here. You've got to be able to absorb that, then whatever.
Yeah. Look at that. You still got it.
I still got it, baby. I still got it. And then we'll get into Fajin and all that in a little bit as well. So I have some thoughts on that. You might be surprised to hear.
Okay.
So that was one thing. So we started really looking at this idea of structure and strength, but intelligent strength.
Right on. Right on.
Then we also started thinking, what are the gaps? And this had been an ongoing thing. This is why, as I say, I spent that time going around for a couple of years. Every weekend I was at a seminar. Peter Considine, Dave Turton, Steve Morris, Jiu-Jitsu guys, JKD guys, the guy with the best name ever, Rick Moneymaker. Did you ever see him? What a great name, Rick Moneymaker. Russell Stootley used to get him over. Pressure points, right?
Yeah.
Nice fella. I felt looking back, it is a little bit like reheated Chinese martial arts from a karate perspective, but you know,
Sure.
And then even looking at the no touch guys and all that sort of thing, because I still think, well, maybe. I didn't find any of them that could make it work.
Yeah, and I do remember because we worked on this together. The Kung Tao.
Yes, yeah, to see that, because of course now we're in the video age, right? So
Yeah.
we were getting
Yes.
all those tapes of Bob Thwars, was it? I can't remember the guy's name, but Kuntao, Sealat, JKD.
Yes, we did. Yes.
Because no one was showing us knife defense, no one was showing us groundwork, no one was showing us how to work in a crowd or anything like that.
And the other guy, the Bajiquan fellow. I have a photo of that.
Oh yeah, Ji Jan Cheng, right?
Yes.
He came over. Nice fella, G. Very nice
Yeah, he
guy.
was.
Very
He
nice
was
guy.
great.
So yeah, that we did Baji form, right? He taught
Yes.
some qigong, and one thing I liked about G was he was very honest as well.
Yes.
So we had a Chinar workshop with him, and he showed us some nice things. One I still remember about: you take someone down, you put their thumbs together, and you tie their thumbs together with a shoelace behind their back. It was a nice little restraint thing, right? And my mate Rob Murray was there, and I said, "Oh, could you demonstrate something on Rob?" And he said, "No, too big." And I thought,
Oh,
fair play, fair play.
nice.
I like that.
No
I like
delusion,
that.
man. No delusion.
Yeah, yeah. So that's cool, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, G was a lovely fella. Uh,
Yeah. He was.
Another guy who I rated who was very interested was Yap Cheng Hai, who came through Yap Long, who used to run Shaolin Way martial arts shop in London.
Okay.
That was his Sifu. Very
Oh, I
interesting
see.
guy as well. Real old school traditional Shaolin five animals or five ancestors, I think it was. Um,
Five others. Yes.
yeah, so that was a little glimpse into that. You think, but by that time it was I was on another path already.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned about Fajin, and of course we're both deep into the Fajin project. Of course, we have our joys in that group. It's quite interesting. But yeah, let's kind of like talk about that a little bit. Like what your perspective of, because we definitely were really trying to work on it. We
Sure.
were trying to really kind of figure out
Right?
something.
Repetitions, boom, boom. The staff, boom, boom. All this stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah, loads of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So give me your well, tell me what your definition or your thoughts were then, and then tell me how it evolved into kind of what you currently think you're working on with now.
I suppose the classical definition is this idea of developing the feet controlled by the waist out through the hands. So this
Yes.
whole body expression or explosion. I mean, I was involved in some of the Erle Montague stuff for a while as well.
Yes,
Mostly through
indeed.
Yeah, mostly through Jimuglo. I don't know if you remember the old Yang form that I used to do.
I do. Yes,
Yeah, that
yes,
was
yeah.
a nice form, and Jim taught it very well.
Uh-huh.
Now I know as soon as you say Erle Montague, some people are going to go, "Oh God!" But again, just put some of those things aside. His form applications were spot on,
Indeed.
absolutely spot on, and I'll die on that hill.
And so I'll make a little branch on that real fast because I did an interview, which I'm still working on the edits for this, with Damon Bramich, right?
Yeah,
And he mentioned that Earl was in some of his classes, and he started off doing. They did some. Well, Damon did start off in some Sin style, but then he went to going Yang style, and Earl was among his classmates, if you will. So he definitely has some experience from those guys to be able to bring that into the fold, because that was one of the forms I worked on too. I mean, via Dave, we worked
yeah,
on the Erle Montague form, and I give a lot of credit as well. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but please continue.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So that aspect of that kind of Fajin, I found quite interesting. And as an aside from that, also then getting into various qigongs. Earl was very big on the reptile brain theory at the time,
Mm-hmm.
which I went into quite deep and various aspects of that. Scientifically, it's bollocks.
Yes.
But even now, I think it can be useful as a model in some respects.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting into more that uh, air quotes internal aspect, I suppose, of how you bring the power out, not just on as a physical expression, but psychologically and
Right.
emotionally as well. Because what I see a lot of even now is kind of this is happening, but there's nothing going on here.
Right on. No intent and no, kind of, you know, purposeful and engagement of what's really being expressed through that action, if you will. Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah. Which, to my mind, on some level, almost puts you back into shamanistic practices, right? Because then you start talking about the tiger and the snake and all this kind of stuff. So
Yes.
there's an interesting little offshoot there, but one I don't think it's psychologically healthy.
Yeah.
You know, so
Indeed. Indeed.
yeah, yeah. Plus, also, I don't think doing that stuff is good for you physically. Uh, what I think now, it's like if you get how often do you turn your light switch on there? A couple of times a day.
Right on.
I think it's like getting your light switch and going on off, tick, 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 with your nervous system.
Exactly.
Something's going to give at some point.
Right, right, right. There should be a balance of like this thing needs to be used here. Okay, let's leave it over there for right now. All right, now I'm going to go and do this a little bit. Yeah, but then let's leave it over there. You know what I mean? Exactly
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
What I find sad now still is how impressed people are by some fast movements. So I remember when Chen Style suddenly burst on the scene and Chen Zhao Wang came over, me and Dave went to see him,
Yeah.
weren't allowed anywhere near him. Got two little, can we push hands? Can we push hands? And, and he demo, you've seen him, right? And you get the nice sound of the jacket, all this kind of stuff. Well,
Yeah.
that's all very nice, but I'll tell you something, Mike. I'll tell you one thing. I've never been hit by a Tai Chi teacher.
Wow.
I've never
Very
been hit.
interesting.
I
I
was
can't
thinking
say
of
that
this
at
the other
all.
day.
Dave's
Well,
hit.
yeah. I mean, I'll leave Dave aside, right? Let me put it this way then. The traditional Tai Chi teachers,
Right on.
never been, I've been pushed, I've been thrown to the floor, never been punched. And
Yeah, extremely interesting.
I'll say something and people might not like it. I don't think they're very powerful with their punches.
Mm,
I think there's a lot of what it looks like. I don't
yes.
think there's so much power, and I'd even go as far to say, because I like to back things up. If I'm saying it, I'd happily take a punch. I'll
Yeah.
give it a try. I'll give it a try.
Yes,
'Cause
sir.
I've been hit by some other people, and boy, oh boy,
We'll
that's that's
talk about that
that's
too. Yes.
another thing, right? So I don't think this big emphasis on far jing for striking. I'm not sure that it's really getting people anywhere.
Right.
You can certainly increase your power in a strike through using the whip or using the wave and using coordinated body movement.
Mm-hmm.
What do they call it? Kinetic chains and all this stuff now.
Yeah. Yes. The connection. Yes.
It's
Yes.
something. Another quick aside. It's interesting how people are getting into all that stuff now. that other arts do. I'm going to say like the Russian martial arts, for example, and now suddenly everyone's doing kettlebells as well and claiming they're Chinese. No, they're not. No.
Yeah.
Again, we're back to that strength, right? Very good. Kettlebells and sledgehammer are very good for developing punching power.
Right on.
They
I
don't
know.
map on to Tai Chi forms. I don't think.
Right.
So. But,
I agree. And that's funny because, as you're mentioning about, the training methods and the mention of Fajin and punches and things like that. One of the things that we always had I guess, that bothered us is that we never saw these guys really fight anybody. And to be able to use these skills in that regard of even to take a punch, because taking a punch changes the scope of things, whether it's body shot or a headshot. How do you respond and recover from that, especially if you haven't been working your neck? To take a punch to the head, it's going to be very challenging, right?
Yeah. I mean, just on a psychological level, if nothing else, even a light slap.
Yes.
And I think you're right. And I'll say another thing as well with Vincent as well. I like Vincent's a lovely fella and is an excellent teacher. With any of the Boston stuff, we never saw any application at all. I mean, Dave, I'm sure Dave will back me up on that.
Yeah.
And we used to ask a lot, of course. And I think that breaking point came when we had Vincent over once and we were in the famous
garage
old clips. And I said to him, "Oh, what about knife defense?" And he said, "Oh, in America we carry guns." Okay, it's not much good to me at 12:30 on a Friday night, is it? Really? So, and there's the applications that are generally shown or were shown. This is something I never like. I mean, sometimes it's justifiable, but okay, you punch me here now, you punch me here, and I do my application. How about you try and punch me, and we'll see what happens.
Right. Yes. And I love that game.
Oh, how about now? Right, there's two people, and one of them's going to try and punch me, and now we'll see what happens. You don't see it. I put this up on the Fajin project the other day because there was some usual stuff going on there. Genuine question. Can anyone show me traditional Tai Chi guy doing knife defense, work on the ground, work against multiples, even just some free flow work? Right. I know there's some guys out there who are doing it because I've met them.
Yes.
And I've seen some other guys. But I'm talking about your big name traditional people out of those schools. Where is this stuff? Where is it?
Right on.
I don't see it.
Yeah. And I think that speaks a lot to where you and Dave branched off and kind of left the CMA, the Chinese martial arts scene. You know what I mean? And you guys start to you know what, man, let's go. Let's take our stuff and go. Let's take our ball and go play in another field. you mind sharing that kind of that the decision, I guess, if you will, or that path that you guys started to take.
I think we both got fed up with it because there's all the politics and all that crap going on as well.
Yeah.
And things like I remember this so well. I think it might have been up Dave's way. It might have been at Gaul or something. There was a competition. And we'd all done whatever we were doing or judging or competing or whatever it was. And I think David demonstrated some pushing hands, maybe even with you or Big Aid or someone like that. And there was a Chinese gentleman there with his students. I don't know the name of the school. And Dave just caught him, overheard something like, well, that wasn't proper push hands. Dave was on him like a tramp on shit. It was so funny. And he got this guy and he said, well, show me. And he started pushing this guy and just ragging him around. And the guy broke off and went to get away. And Dave pulled him back three times. 3 times. This guy is getting more and more. What the fuck is going on? And then Dave, with the accent, that's fucking pushing hands for you, you fuckers. Oh, that was so funny,
Yes.
And that's the stage we got to was, right, if you're going to slack it off, then great, but show me something or come and do something with us,
Right on.
that's just been a constant throughout, really, for both of us, I think.
Indeed, indeed,
Because
indeed.
we don't know everything. There's a ton of people out there who are better than us with stuff we don't know. So
Yeah.
I say you progress. Like, I could have said to Rob Murray, fucking hell, I don't want that bloke coming back to class.
Right.
But look at what I would have missed out on.
Exactly that. Exactly that, man. Exactly that. Yeah. Because I know this, you guys, started the cutting edge, internal
Yeah,
combat system, right?
yeah,
No mention of Chinese martial arts or anything specific. But I know you guys start to delve, which is now one of the things that people got, get their raises the hairs on their arms, the temperature in their heads and things like that. And you guys start to get into Systema, right?
yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So first of all, how did you guys get word of Systema? I mean, I remember all the videotapes back
Sure.
then, so I remember those. But how did you guys even get word of it, and then what led you in that way?
Well, it was my old mate Anthony Walmsley, who lives and teaches out in Italy now. Is a great guy, and he
Yeah.
used to send me over videos. Most of those videos that we used to get, the Kuntao guy and all that, were from Tony. He used to send me tons of
Okay.
stuff. We had a nice little exchange going, and he sent me one. I think it was a 3-part tape. It was Vladimir Vasiliev and Oleg Taktarov, the UFC guy,
Yeah,
right?
UFC guy. Yes, I
Yeah,
remember him in the videos big time.
yeah.
Yes.
And so, well, there's a couple of things. First of all, they're doing stuff like they're working against knives. They're working with chairs. They're grabbing the guy's jacket and doing. So that's interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
and then just Vladimir's movement. I
Yeah.
thought, wow, that movement is really smooth. That's super
Yeah.
smooth and precise.
Uh-huh.
But his guys fall over real easy. Uh,
Yeah.
they're just falling down as soon as he touches them. But his movement looks good, so I'm interested. So
Right.
I wrote to him,
Ah.
and eventually found out he was coming across to the UK. This would have been about 99, 2000, maybe something like that.
Yeah, yes, exactly. About 99, yes. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So his very first visit to the UK, me and Dave went along,
Yeah.
and there's Vladimir, smiley, friendly guy, uh, and he just looked at us and he said to me, "Go on then." I said, like, "Well, go on what?" He said, "Well, whatever you want." So, all right. So here we go, pushing hands. I've got the big route. I've not learnt my lesson right, from Rob Murray all those years ago, but I'm 10 years down the line now, right? So I should be able to at least keep my footing. I'm on the floor. All right, okay, let's try that 3 or 4 times on the floor. And the weird thing was, like with Rob, I knew he was lifting me up, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
with Vladimir, you're thinking, what happened there? And Vladimir said, "Oh, your balance is quite good."
On the floor.
So you start laughing, and then he starts, and then we start working with him, and it was, yeah, I fell down as easy as these other guys. So then you start thinking, right, well, what's all this about then?
Yeah.
And I think at first, me and Dave both tried to bring our Tai Chi understanding into it, because you got to start from where you are.
Right on. Right on.
So we could see certain things with the softness, for example, and the sensitivity. But then these guys were going to the floor and rolling, and their shoulders are doing all this weird stuff, because before, oh, don't lift your shoulders, don't lift your shoulders.
Right.
Well,
Yes.
if a punch is
Yes.
coming in, I'm going to lift my shoulder, right? So yeah, that was the start of that, really. And we started blending that in. And by some point, I was blending so much of it in, I thought, why don't I just do Systema?
Right
You
on.
know.
Right on.
So went across to Toronto to train direct out there, and that was that, really.
That was that. Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, I just recently watched another guy. This was his second take. I wish I would remember his name now. I think someone even posted in the Fajin project. But he had experience with Systema initially a couple of years back, and then he went recently to go and revisit. And he goes, "Yeah, man, I got a better perspective of what's happening now. You know what I mean? It's like because I think in the video he was punching a guy in the stomach, right?
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
wasn't getting nowhere. And then Vlad went and the guy drops back in there. Of course, we got a lot of flack. Folks like, "Oh, that was the worst acting scene I ever seen before."
Sure.
I know this for myself because I never got to work with Vlad directly. I got mine through a little bit from you, a little bit from Dave, and because I ended up leaving. Was it 2000? I think I came back in 2001 when I came back to the States. So like once you guys started really taking off in that, it was when I was actually leaving the UK and stuff. But
Right.
I remember Dave showing how the punching, wow, and I used to do Iron Shirt and stuff, and I did competitions, and I got kicks to the belly. He did the punch to me, and watch my,
Yeah.
like everything just dropped down. Say this is as respectful as possible to my groin and to my quad. It's Chinese reference, and like, holy crap, man! Like you feel like your guts, everything just dropped down into your legs and stuff, man. So, what was that? That change for you guys to start to see like, oh man, this is a different delivery system that we're working with.
Well, very much so. And I remember we got Sergei Ozreliev over, and
Yes.
he started here. Then we brought him up to Dave's places up there,
Yep.
and
Yep.
we were in Dave's old house in the kitchen chatting to Sergei. Well, trying to, because
Yeah. Broken.
the language thing. And Sergey is about the same size as Dave, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's not a big guy or anything. And Dave was asking about the punches, and Sergey dropped both of us in the kitchen. Boom, boom. We were both down on the floor.
Yeah.
Oh, punch like this. And then, of course, we got Mikhail came over to Cambridge, and I've got that footage somewhere of now. We'd all done conditioning, right? All done different types of conditioning and iron shirt. I know Dave in particular had a very strong iron shirt because I've seen
Indeed.
him taking punches from boxers right at some of
Right
those
on.
events. Yeah. And Michael just it was just something else. I'm sure Dave will tell you about that when you speak to him next time about
Yeah.
it.
Yes. Yeah.
So you start thinking, well, I think one thing we both said, Tai Chi people like to go, oh yes, of course, yeah, Yang Lu Chan, he had to fight with this guy and he threw him up on the roof, and Chen's or whatever, he did this and did. There's guys who can do shit now around, but you won't go near them. It's
Yes.
interesting, isn't it? You'd
Right on.
rather feed off of these stories from the past.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, a very different way to develop power, and it didn't rely on a stance. It was relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
Relaxation is so key to this stuff, and I think once you get deeper into it, you understand more and more about relaxation, and people
Indeed.
have struggle with that because if I want to hit someone hard, what do you mean be relaxed? I've got to be strong. Yeah, but the strength comes from all your exercises, right? Of which Systema has
Plethora.
legion, multiple, and then you carry that heaviness with you. But when you deliver it, boom, it is like being hit by the hammer or the kettlebell.
Yeah.
And of course, the biggest thing for me, no forms.
No forms. And I'm gonna laugh about something because when it came about, as a trend over here, I was like, dude, I was doing that way back when. So the ice bucket challenge, you remember?
Right.
What I mean? We were doing that way back. You know what I
Sure.
mean? To
Yeah.
really stimulate you type stuff. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
That's what I'm saying about this stuff slowly catching on. And now all of a sudden people are talking about slow sparring, right? And they're talking about
yes.
wave movement and kettlebells and kinetic chains and press ups, even on. You want press ups?
Right on.
How many
Yes.
different types do you want?
For real.
But
For real.
functional, functional press
Yes.
ups. That's the thing. Not just doing. I can do 100. Well, yeah, but
Easy now.
you're not punching any harder, are you? But what
Exactly.
about if you do them this way? And learn to relax all this off. Then when you hit, wow, now the power's coming out.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah. So I think, I still give Tai Chi a lot of credit for my development, but the stuff that they showed me with that in all the training methods with that, incorporating that into, what I, was doing from Tai Chi, just like from here to here, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And the mindset changes too, as well, about what you mentioned about relaxation.
Yeah.
The way I understand how to relax changed in that regard. So without me even going deep into Systema as you guys did, just those little kind of things, and it goes back to what I mentioned about this guy that I saw the other day in the second follow up to his interview, where he said, what I think people don't understand and how Systema could be such a supplement to any other thing that you're doing to enhance it. Yes.
This is absolutely the thing I found. It improved my Tai Chi and what I was doing. I've got guys who train with me, Thai boxing, all sorts of different types of martial art. It's improved what they do. I've got a guy who's a climber, you know, without the ropes
Yes.
and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's not a style, because it's an operating system.
Right on.
You learn how to strengthen your body. You learn how to regulate your nervous system, your emotional state, and you learn to combine all these with good movement. So the downside of that is it can be so diverse that it's difficult to know where to come into it. You know, how do you start? And as a teacher, where do you begin? Because
Right.
even though there's only really four basic principles, they're quite deep.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think the other thing as well is a lot of martial arts people don't like it because it doesn't look like martial arts,
Sure.
right? And
Sure.
I do have to smile a bit when I get a guy saying, "Oh, what sort of people are these? What sort of men are these?" And
Yeah, I
he's
saw that.
right,
Yeah. Those
and
men.
yeah, and he's on his page posing in silky PJs doing this. Yes. Okay, all right, whatever. But Vlad and Michael and these people are not martial artists; they're military guys,
Yeah, yeah.
and they're I don't go too much into that, but they're high level military guys, you know. So you get this approach of their experiences, you get the operational side of things from various perspectives. If you want to talk about close protection work, for example, you know, that's all there as well. They know how to apply that. Uh, you get the health side, both from the movement and this feeling of just being nice and relaxed, but also then you mentioned the dowsing, lots of different types of massage,
Hmm.
manipulation, all this kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
for me, it all came together in one package. I don't feel like I have to get bits from here and bits from there anymore, you know.
Right on. Right on. And I think right off the bat, because I've always been into watching combat sports from boxing to kickboxing. Kickboxing used to be on the TV back in the '80s, big time in the U.S. before it kind of like fell to the wayside. And when I'm watching a video of Vlad, and I see Oleg, and I was like, that's the dude from the UFC. Like he's like fucking because he did Sambo and everything too as well.
Sure,
And I was
sure.
like, hell yeah, that dude's badass. Like and I'm watching what they're doing. I can see the relationship to what he was doing also in his fights. So and this is kind of like two tangent in reference to what I'm gonna kind of ask or speak about is that a lot of the flack what we see within Systema is about the movement, about the going back to the almost the Chinese reference of the empty touch type
Yeah,
stuff that
the
you
no
see Mikhail
contact.
doing.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
And then on that is not seeing it in that vein of being in the combat sports as a,
Sure.
like you mentioned, a style, which it isn't.
Yeah.
So first, I guess if you can talk about how the practical side ties to the, if you want to call it the esoteric side, and then how the full-fledged kind of martial side of it really kind of kicks in, if you will. So
Okay. I think when we talk about Michael, well, there's a few things. One is there, of course, exists now a lot of YouTube channels whose aim is to make money out
yeah,
of putting someone's clip up and then everyone can have a good laugh, you know. Uh,
of course.
and in some cases, just I mean, we've all done it, right? So I can't complain about that. And everyone in Systema knows, yeah, we know it looks odd. We know that.
Yeah,
Um, but this is this thing of as you go deeper into some of these areas, particular relaxation and sensitivity. So Michael had such a sensitivity that he could uh, control you from very light touch simply by understanding the tension in your own body and how we could move it. Uh,
interesting.
that is then applied from the no contact touch through psychology. Everything was explained to me as psychology. No beams of energy, which we've both seen plenty of, right? Guy
Yeah,
in Newcastle, all that stuff. Um,
yeah,
So, I made a video about it a little while ago. The secret of no contact work is there has to be contact. Because if you close your eyes and I do something, you don't see it, there's no contact, nothing's going to happen.
Right on.
But if you come walking towards me at speed and I make some sort of gesture, then perhaps we'll get something going on. So
Yeah.
it's that, but his understanding on that was very deep. And people, I can understand this thing. People say, "Oh, it's a cult," and everyone falls over. Well, that's what I said at first when I saw Vladimir, right?
Yeah.
So then you go and see Michael, and you even, oh, what the fuck? It's very confusing when you experience this kind of stuff at first because you what the hell's going on, you know? So it's positioning and it's picking up cues and it's working with people on a very subtle level. And the thing that I suppose sort of clinched it for me was no one ever said you have to react like this. So when I push you, you have to bounce up and down in order to dispel the energy through your feet, right? Or you have to. Everyone reacts in their own way,
Yes. Yes.
and no one says no, you did that wrong. And one very big lesson I learned from Michael early on, when actually it was in Cambridge, was he called me out to demo and he hit me. I did something and he went to him, but he kind of pulled it and he sort of looked at me. We did it again. He sort of pulled it again and sort of looked at me again. I haven't got a clue what's going on because my background was you throw a punch at the teacher, right? And then you kind of stand there and you wait for the hit to come in.
Yeah.
So the next time he hit me, and I did the best roll I've ever done in my life ever since, I went arse over tit and off I went. And then, you want me to move out of the way of your punch? And it was like, well, of course, why wouldn't you? You know? So when they punch you, you are allowed to try and move out the way.
Gotcha.
So then his skill becomes, even though you're moving out the way, he'll still get you, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's much less about this. What's the uki? You know, the
Yeah.
Japanese kind. I have to receive the technique. No, this is a two-way thing. If
Right
you
on.
see much punch coming, then yeah, move out of the way.
Excellent.
Obviously, if you're working a drill where you're taking strikes or something, then you know.
So different.
But how you react is up to you. You know,
Awesome. Awesome.
I'll
Yeah.
give you advice. Yeah, you might try this, you might try that. But at the end of the day, it's how your body works, how your nervous system reacts to it. That's what we're working on, not on how hard I can
Indeed.
punch, but your response to it.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, so, being devil's advocate here, right? So
Sure.
would you say that someone would say, oh, that's the same thing that Tai Chi folks would say. You have to experience it in order to know what it feels like. You hear that narrative a lot, right? What would you say towards that in that regard?
I think there is an aspect of that because, like I say, we all know what Michael does looks odd,
Yeah.
and what Vladimir. But there's also context as well. So
Sure.
sometimes Vlad's just demonstrating a little movement, and people go, "Oh, it doesn't look like a real fight." Well, it's not a real fight. It's just talking about look how relaxed my shoulder is when I hit these people or
Yes.
something. Um, but I think with things like that more subtle work, or even just the hits, you've felt it from Dave, right? And someone said you were acting, so you can't understand that until you feel it.
Yeah.
Having said that, I'm just as guilty of anyone else. I've even made videos about it. I look at someone doing their chi power tricks, but I know where they're doing it. I can see how they're working it.
Right on. Yes.
I can see he's doing this. He's telling the bloke, right, push down on my arm, tense up, then it's very easy to move and all that. So I've been through that.
Right on.
But
Same.
even so, I could be wrong. I might go and meet that guy. He might throw me all around the room.
Yeah, to happen. Yes. Yes.
Could happen.
Yeah, because I'm very nomadic with myself. I don't have this gregarious. I'm going to challenge you everywhere I go, but I go and meet people. Wherever they may be, wherever I may find myself, and we go and push. And I look for that. I look for. All right, I want to be. I want to be amazed. I want to kind of feel that, like, if you really got this thing from the person you've been learning from, and if it doesn't happen, then we're just doing our regular old pushing hands type stuff and everything like that, and
Yeah.
go about my merry way. But I expect at some point in time in life, I would hope if it exists, I will come across it. But I'm not I'm not in the mindset that I'm missing out on something because I haven't yet experienced that. You know what I
Sure,
mean?
sure. Yeah.
So and I think with Systema stuff that obviously my experience is far more limited than yours than Dave's, and I know Dave, as we just mentioned, Dave is the least esoteric person. He's a no BS type dude, right? And I think it may even find it hard for people to even believe that coming saying what I'm saying. When he was giving me his feedback on Vlad and Mikhail, I was like, for real? Like, really? He goes,
Yeah.
Mike, oh, you just can't believe the way these guys hit, the way the stuff, the way they move, the way that but then, when you guys start to build up your skills in it, and you guys start to articulate the same thing, and I started to get a dose of it, then I was like, okay, yeah, now it makes sense to me. Now, when I see stuff and I see the back and forth arguing, you know, I know where you guys are coming from and what vein you guys are like pulling from to say, yeah, no, this is why it's like this, and then you know what, I'm not even going to argue with you about it because you know what I mean.
Well,
Just come along. Like
it's pointless.
you put it out there, totally different. You put it out there like, oh well, if you're having that feel, come along.
Yeah.
And then you know what I mean. We're open and welcome for it. Dave is no different. Dave is the same way. Come along as opposed to like you're making it difficult for folks. Like, okay, well, if you go to my seminar and you pay my workshop, if you buy this here,
Sure,
then I'll
sure. Oh
show
yeah,
you this.
come to Thailand and we'll try it out. Yeah, yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
mean, I've been in that situation before because I used to get Vladimir over and I had Michael over and I had someone saying all that. I said, well, this guy lived in Essex, so not far. Michael was coming to here. Well,
yeah,
come along. Oh, I'm not paying for the workshop. I'm organising it. You can come for free. Yeah, but you won't let me contact him. You can try what you like. Oh, right. My only sort of condition is we film it. That's it. And also, like you agree, if something happens, that's it. We gentleman's agreement or whatever.
yeah.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, will we fight under kickboxer rules? Fight under what you like, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
but then you get into this other area because it can be sort of difficult at times when you meet people. So with pushing hands or whatever else. Um, so you've had a lot more experience of this with me.
Yeah.
When you start pushing hands with someone, what are you pushing hands for?
Right.
So are you having at the recent meet up in Leicester
I was
were
about to
you?
talk about that.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
So we had a nice little warm up and we push each other a bit. It's that kind of. But I think as Alan pointed out in competition, right? Someone's got it's a different feeling again.
Right
So
on.
um, if everyone's on the same page with what you're doing it for, then I think that's great as well. That's important as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. So I know right now. I mean, Systema has really grown for you. You like you said, you just come back from France, if I'm not correct.
Yeah, yeah, I've been over
Yeah.
to France 3 times this year and Switzerland. Yeah, so I've been working around Europe quite a bit, different workshops. Yeah.
So tell me about it, Rob. What is different from your days of doing Tai Chi workshops to your days now of doing Systema workshops?
There's a lot more going on in the Systema workshop. So we did 3 days recently.
Uh-huh.
First of all, there's very little solo work.
Okay.
I'm sure if you were some of those, I remember the days of standing in the hall, going through the form, and the the big teacher turns up an hour late anywhere, but the other guy's there, and you do this. So that's the first 30 minutes, right? And by the end of the day, you've learnt the first part or whatever is. So the solo work will probably be some moving around on the ground or some breathing work just to loosen up. Then
Mhm.
everything else is either partner work or working with 3 people or working as a whole
Mm.
group.
Excellent. Excellent.
So over 3 days in Caen recently, we did working with sticks, movement, awareness drills, sensitivity with the stick, working in a group with the stick. We did knife work of various types, including some live blade training. We had people blindfolded and doing various stuff with that. We did taking strikes. We did everyone fighting in the middle. We did everyone in the middle with some knives.
Excellent.
You can basically take it wherever you want to take it.
Nice.
You can focus. We always end up with doing some massage and that kind of stuff as well.
Right on,
So
right on, right on, right on.
it's whatever you want to do, really. There's no syllabus, there's no you have to do this form, then that form, then whatever.
And where do you feel it's going as far as the future with Systema? Do you feel like it's going to reach a plateau of like, all right, yeah, this is the farthest reach it's going to make, or do you think it's going to start to touch into some other realms, like like we were mentioning with the other guy we just talked about? We were talking about how it can be supplementary to other things. How do you think it's going to be received as it goes forward?
I think there'll be a bit of that. I think it's going to start influencing more and more other arts or styles. Whether people admit it or not is another thing, but I think we're seeing that already. Uh, Personally, I'm finding more and more professional people interested. I
Interesting.
did a workshop 3 weeks ago for the local police.
Oh, nice.
So that was a very interesting session. And I would say a certain amount of the people who come to me are professional in respect of military or similar things, or
Excellent.
of that background.
Yeah.
And Vlad said something once. He said, "Professionals see things with a different eye," which I thought was
Yeah.
a very interesting comment. Uh, because again, you have to laugh. I get something like a comment on YouTube, and you look and it's some 19-year-old kid from somewhere else, like about Vladimir. That guy looks like he's never had a fight in his life. And first time I went to Moscow, we were taken to a base, special forces base, Vitiaz unit, urban assault, and we were quite privileged. Really, we were allowed to see the selection process that was going on.
Oh, wow.
The
Wow.
culmination of that is 12 minutes full contact fighting
Wow.
with members of the unit jumping in. So every minute or two, a fresh guy jumps in and takes over.
Yes, yes, yes.
Six people out of 50 passed it.
Like the gauntlet type training type.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
That's just the sum of what these guys have been through, right? So then for people to turn around and say they don't understand fighting, it's funny. I mean, so I don't think people necessarily understand what it's like in Russia.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you can say the same thing. People don't understand it even in your own hometown, because what you were mentioning earlier was about the meetup that you hosted, right? And that was because of, I believe that there was Hinckley School of Tai Chi or something like that.
That was your
That
fault. That was your fault. you, you and your clips, necro, necro forms. Well, I looked at that. I thought, was it 1999? Jeez.
Yeah, 99, man.
My head is like 5 years ago. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so you put that clip up, and well, it was large frame, right? So it's the
It was.
developmental form, right? Extend, strength, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and the Hinkley guy just, where did he come from? He just went both barrels, didn't he, on it?
Yeah, he did. Just like he doesn't know anything about it. Look at that posture. His posture's all wrong. Like whatever,
Yeah.
all the stuff he was just throwing out there. Yeah.
And so you think, all right, okay, let's go along with this then. So again, the question is, well, let's see what you got, and and it just got more and more silly, and some other people got involved, and
Yeah.
it ended with him and his teacher were going to track me down, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So he's gonna
Like
get this
like I'm
teacher.
hard to find or something. I've got
Like
YouTube
his big brother
channels.
or his dad's coming into town, and we're gonna
Yeah,
show you.
that's okay. Well, we'll save you the bother. We'll come to Leicester. We'll come to your home turf. Uh, I got some mates up there, Ed and his crew.
Yeah.
Uh, they sorted out the gym. Uh, Sent him an invitation. I sent it through 3 different ways, so I was
You
sure he got
did.
it. Nothing.
Right on.
What in the old days we used to call a shitter, basically.
Yeah.
But the good thing that came out of it, the good guys did come along, so we had a nice time.
Excellent, excellent. And I saw your breakdown of that, and I saw also Alan's, man. But getting it, like, I mean, from you, like, first of all, definitely I give you full credit for putting that together, and then allowing it still to go even without that guy showing up, and then for what it became. But tell me about the energy of the folks for you, like to kind of be amongst. Obviously now you're among people who not necessarily practice what you're practicing anymore. So,
Yeah.
what was that kind of like re-networking with, different folks?
Well, it was interesting for me in a way because what I tried to do, what I was trying to do was go back to my Tai Chi stuff.
Yeah.
So, just stick within that sort of format, if you like.
Uh-huh.
Um, the so we did some push hands, we did some sparring. I think it was all fairly light because like we were saying, it's like a first date, right? Everyone's kind of
Yeah,
not
test
quite
this.
sure, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think Alan and Andy were going at it a bit harder. They were, they were comfortable with that.
Yeah.
This is the thing I've always had with that type of sparring. Oh, the push hands even. What is it for? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Um, so I had an experience. This was quite a while back. I hadn't been doing Systema for that long. We went. Do you remember
Uh-huh.
Bushido, the forum?
Yes.
They were right. They had a local throwdown, so we went along to that. A few guys
Uh-huh.
went along to that, uh, and that was sparring and rolling and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But there was an interesting thing I learned there. We had a guy with us. He wasn't really part of our group, but he came along, and he was up first for the sparring. And as the other guy stepped in, our guy just went boom and just dropped him, and there was like a round the room. I thought, oh, that's interesting. So then when I came and I was sparring with this young guy, I'm just kind of tapping him, and then I got criticised because my sparring was crap, which it no doubt is anyway, right? So I thought that's interesting. And then another point, I was rolling with a guy on the floor, a BJJ guy, and I don't know what the rules are because
Yeah.
So off you go. And I said to him at one point, "Am I allowed to put my hand over your nose and mouth?" He said, "Yeah, I think so." So I went, "That's that, is it? Okay." Um, so I'm fully in it. Yeah, I mean, we do some form of sparring every session. There's
Sure.
always this interplay. But why are we working to get a flow? Are we working to simulate an actual fight? Are we working to right? We're going to focus on working with kicks or against kicks. There's always a purpose. Having said that, I mean, the guys who know each other and train for a while, they'll just start off and have a bit of a punch up maybe. But uh,
Yeah.
so when I come into those situations, I'm always a bit right. What is this for? And it's nice
Indeed.
when everyone's nice. It's not an issue because we're moving around and we're doing some stuff.
Yeah, and a quick aside, because I do want you to continue on that experience, is like but folks hear this in the professional boxing a lot, right? They'll like, especially now since we have the internet and the way social media is, it's like they'll post up a clip of two well-known boxers of them sparring, right? And then you'll see a lot of comments. It's like, oh man, come on now, they're just sparring, all right, And I think you led to something right there. Like, what's it for? Because generally in sparring, you're gonna have, because I do like sparring too, and a lot of times when I'm going with different people, I'm working on different things.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm working on different aspects of myself and allow them to do whatever they want to do, if you will, unless we have an agreement. Or we're gonna work on takedowns or whatever, right? And that's
Sure.
the thing. You're trying to enhance a certain skill in that environment that when you're out and not having the latitude to be exploratory because you're in the mix of things where you have to be very specific on how to get out of the situation you're in, be it
Yeah.
a competitive fight or an actual live situation. You want to be aware of what you have in your toolbox and how it's going to function in that environment. And that's what sparring is for. It's like you need to lend yourself to, like, what are we doing this for? What am I doing this for? What am I actually trying to? All right, I'm working with a tall guy. I want to see how I can get my reach inside of there to be able to
Sure.
get access
Sure.
to him. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So I think you're spot on right about that, about why are we doing this? All right, so now we need to make this agreement as we start to engage. So if one doesn't get out of control, then it gets to a real fight
Yeah.
or a real bad situation, and we end up, being at odds with each other because we didn't have this agreement of what we were here working on, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was a good energy from the videos that I saw, that everyone
It was.
is diverse.
Yeah.
You go from person to person, but you saw that agreement being
Yeah.
made. So
Yeah.
yeah, how you felt that was established? Did you guys talk about it, or did you guys just like read the energy of each person? Going back to the psychology again that you mentioned before, and just knowing like, okay, now we're touched a little bit. Now we know we're gonna stay on this lane of exchange. How was that for you guys?
Yeah, it's a bit of both things, I think. I mean, we had quite a long chat at the start, and unfortunately, Kwong had to leave early for work, so he
Yeah,
was in the chat, but then not in the rest. And yeah, and but then the psychology, you quickly pick up on people. Are people agitated? Are they nervous? Are they showing aggression? You know, or are they just like these guys were all cool? And
yeah,
you know, well, let's try this now. Okay, so it was very comfortable in that sense. Um, and I think the other important thing is whatever you're doing it for, uh, you need to get hit. You know,
right, indeed.
Vladimir said this once. If you're an instructor, you should get hit 5 times as much as because when you're teaching, you can be hitting a lot. You need
Right.
to hit as well. So it's
Yeah.
nice to get hit.
Yeah. Yes,
As funny
indeed.
as that sounds.
Yeah.
Um,
No, you're right. You're right.
so there's that aspect, and I, I suppose at the end of the day, we felt, in a sense, we're on the same side. I mean, not that it's about sides as such, but you know what I mean.
I do
We're
know exactly what you mean.
we're
Yes.
all there for the same purpose.
Yeah.
If what's his name had turned up and was determined, what's he going to do? The doors are going to fling open, and he's going to come in. You have offended my teacher. All right, okay. So you know, then there's a different vibe in the room, right? There's a different feel. Now we're into something else.
Right
So
on.
then you've got to make a decision based on that, how that works out.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, hopefully we can do it again because I know Mikey right up in Leicester has offered us use of his school.
Yeah. You
Uh,
mentioned yes. Yeah.
yeah, so I must message him actually, and we'll see if we can sort something out for the new year, January, February. Uh,
Yeah.
and this time I think we'll maybe be a bit more structured. We kind of know each other, so we can say, look, well, shall we try this? Shall we try that? You
Excellent.
know,
Excellent.
we're happy to have a go at any of that stuff. Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure your hopes is for it to grow. Right.
Well, who
More
knows?
people. I mean,
Yeah,
more involvement.
yeah, yeah. It's been interesting the response to it. Actually, I've had a lot of messages and people. Oh, let me know when the next one is. I'd love to come down. You know, so
Awesome. Awesome.
maybe this is something. I suppose lockdown uh, shut a lot of things, didn't it? And uh, I think maybe people are looking for something that isn't necessarily competition, where you go
Right.
in and you have your weight class and all that, but it's more informal. So
Yes.
if you want to do ground, you can do ground. If you don't want to, you don't have to. If you want to
Yeah.
put a load of gloves on, you can. If you don't, you can just, you know, whatever. As long as there's
Yeah.
agreement. I thought it might be nice to do some like sword sparring or something like that, or you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
just
Yes.
try some
Break out the
different things.
sticks and everything. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. I totally
maybe
agree.
maybe finish with the big mass attacks.
Yeah.
But then that's my Systema creeping in, right? So I don't want to go, you know, I don't want to be look like I'm pushing stuff, you know, or but if people want to try different things out, then that's a neat thing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to quite a few different meetups, throughout the states. We try to host ours here in Texas, like quarterly at least. And then before COVID, we were doing a lot more in different areas. Like I'm in San Antonio, Texas area, and then Houston is about a 3 hour drive from where I am. It's out in East Texas. Austin is about an hour drive, a little, plus or minus a few minutes here. They had their own little group going there as well, and we were really kind of picking up. And of course, COVID happened, and that kind of broke things up. And then we started doing it again in Houston, that being more consistent. But what we're finding were even in Houston that other schools outside of even Tai Chi were starting to come in and wanted to
Oh,
do some of the sandow sparring, even
nice.
some of the pushing hands and things like that. And then when I went to Tampa, they have one, would have it twice a year to fall in the spring retreat, and that's mostly pushing hands. But there are some folks that do, like some folks that only do pushing hands, but they don't necessarily do Tai Chi. And there's folks,
Sure.
different branches of Tai Chi. And you got all the kinds of Tai Chi, if you will, from and the folks are very, internal esoteric to the ones who are a bit more, gregarious about the way they want to train. I did the open mat that's hosted by Chris Marshall
Right.
out in Seattle, which was again that was good meeting different people, different flavors of it, folks who had backgrounds in judo and things like that, and other styles, white crane,
Yeah. Yeah.
kung fu, if you will. And I'm all for that. I'm all for the exchange of practice ideas, concepts,
Sure.
ways of getting in, but I always want to make sure that it has some kind of practical base towards it. That I'm doing my goal, even for pushing hands, how's this going to work when I get into mix of things, right? Is it
Sure.
teaching me distance? Is it teaching me sensitivity and contact? Is it teaching me awareness? Just recently I have these two students in my university class that I've been, they wanted to learn more than the form I'm teaching for the kinesiology program that I do there. And
Nice.
so we started meeting up independently, and then they're like, hey, I'm showing them like takedowns and stuff like that. And it's like, and I did something, I don't know what it was, but anyway, I did something, and one of them goes, so what's it like for you to take on two people? I was like, well, I don't know. Let's try it. Let's go. Let's see what it's like. And they're totally inexperienced, so I know it works in my favor in that regard. But I've done it in other environments. I like to play like that. I like to
Yeah.
see what it's going to be tested. And I told them, like, as we go on, I want to show you how to do it with strikes. So you're attacking me, you're trying to take me down. Now you're also trying to strike me when I'm down. So to see how, because one of the things I do for them is not to keep them tied to form. I want them to get exposed to one, punches coming at you and how to be comfortable
Yeah.
in that environment. Because that's going to do you a lot more good. I'm going to teach you the form and let you understand what the form applications are. But one of the things you mentioned earlier is about getting hit should be one of the key things that you should be familiar with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If
Primary things.
you can't manage your own nervous system, then you've got no chance because even
Right,
as soon
right.
as you sense a threat, oh, it all freezes. And I'm sure we both know of experienced martial arts people, even
Yeah.
who under a sudden, uh, sort of onslaught, it might not be a skilled guy, but if it's a big guy and there's a couple of them, that's what you say, you drop your bottle and, you know,
Yeah, and that brings me up to another tangent. And I wanted to bring this up a little bit earlier. I know we kind of got into the what we were talking about the meetups and things like that, but I want to kind of circle back because I know the environment of England right now is a lot of knife violence. I have a friend of mine that I met when he was younger, and he goes around and do kind of workshops and kind of more so what's the one, the community work on about knife violence and talking
right,
about bullying and things
right,
like that, right? So his thing is trying to get folks about knife awareness, but trying to get folks about be aware about the bullying that goes along with that, and the community violence of trying to bring that down a level.
sure.
How do you feel in your comfort level about your knife training and what you put out there in regards to that? There's a guy here I want to go and train with named Paul Rubio. He's done some stuff in Houston, one of my friends, and he's
Right.
all over the internet. He's got a very good following in knife defense in regard. And you got the Budo brothers, a whole bunch of
Yeah.
other ones that are out there that do that kind of training. How do you feel that works in your environment based on is such a thing over there as far as knife violence?
I've done a few sessions for an organisation. That, funny enough, that was up in Leicester as well. So that was PCSOs, who are like community police support
Uh-huh.
officers,
Yes.
and also with some local community youth sort of leaders as well. They
Excellent.
specifically wanted to look at knife stuff, and they went very well. One of the things they said to me was they approached a few people because what do? You look in the yellow pages or online or whatever, martial arts. Uh, and they said I was the only one who came at it from the angle of how do you know someone's carrying a knife? What do you do if you see the knife? All the other people wanted to show this is how you kick the knife out of someone's hand. You do
Yeah.
this move and you do this move. Right. Forget all that. Forget all that for a start. Who's carrying the knife? This is how
Yes.
people carry knives. This is how. So loads of exercises around that before you even start getting into techniques. Well, I don't like techniques anyway, but that's
Of
another.
course. I know you don't. I know.
But also just being used to being around the knife as well, because again, we go back to that psychological aspect. And I've taught in lots of different schools, different styles, and everything else. And even in some, if I brought out like an aluminium training knife, you get that, you know. As I mentioned in France, we did some live blade training. I won't go too much into that now, but that's another area in itself.
Uh-huh.
Uh, now you're training with a real knife. Can you imagine how that feels, right?
Right.
But that's
Yes.
the aim of the drill. It's not about what you're doing with it. It's just how do you feel holding it? How does the other person feel when you hold it towards them? you start addressing all these issues. And the other thing I added in from that, of course, is things like first aid and all these sort of considerations
Oh,
as
nice.
well.
Okay. Okay.
So in terms of knife defense, we actually we got it pretty much shut down. My wife works for the police, by the way. There was a local group who were going to teach a 4-hour knife defense workshop, how to defend yourself against a knife in 4 hours.
Wow. Okay.
So, with all the usual pictures, this stuff, and she actually, it didn't go ahead in the end. Let's put it like that, because
Awesome.
this is just irresponsible. This is just
Yeah.
madness. Unless you're going to come from this aspect of, right, well, let's start, forget the kung fu stuff and all this stuff. Let's start with the basics. But the trouble is, when you teach any form of self-defense, this isn't what people are looking for. Right. I'll pick on Krav Maga because one of my guys had some experiences, and anyway, people like the look of it as self-defense because they see the lad who trained in it and came and trained with us said an interesting thing. Said in Krav Maga class, you're not allowed to contact. So you hit the pads, you can't hit each other. He said, I come here, you're training on a wooden floor, everyone's hitting each other. We're training with sticks and knives and all sorts. No one gets injured. Krav Maga, someone gets injured every week. I said, well, why do you think that is? He said, because you guys know how to relax.
Yes. Yes.
No one's nervous system is spiking with the attendant results. So, but if you want to teach self-defense to a group of quote normal people, they don't really want to know about that stuff. They want a neat move. Well, when the guy grabs me, I knee him in the nuts. So it's difficult until you go into that professional setting, and then, like with the police, you start talking about breathing to control your nerve and all that sort of stuff. Oh wow, right, square breathing, whatever it is, they get it because they're dealing with this shit day to day.
Yeah, and it's interesting, man, because I've taught my, I guess I want to say share self-defense to people, but my initial approach is, first of all, you gotta have the intent on saving yourself, having the mindset of saving yourself just as much as this person is going to hurt you. And that means you're going to have to let go of any of your regard for blood, pain, you know what I mean? Over aggression that you're not used to seeing people have, I mean, and, this coping with aggression, people really don't even understand it from a perspective of even an argument. You know what I mean? Because, because they ignore distance. They ignore body language. They ignore of, like you mentioned, like, where's the knife coming from? Where's the punch even coming from? Where's that head dropping in front of me because I put myself right in front of that face? There's so many other details that goes into it before I can even show you, quote unquote, a technique about something, because nothing's ideal. You don't know where you're going to find yourself when this happens. I mean, I'll give you an example, right? Just recently, we went to this place called Galveston, and all right, as clever as I am with movement and things like that, sometimes I'm just a clumsy, goofy dude, right?
It happens to us all. you bang your shin on the coffee table and all
that.
Yeah,
exactly. So we're in the car on a ferry, right? We're taking a ferry. My friend goes up to go to the bathroom and things like that, right? So he takes off from the front seat, driver's side. In America, we're in driver's side on the left-hand side. He takes off. He's gone for a second. And our two other halves says to me, hey, you might maybe go check on him, make sure he's going okay. Okay. So I go open the door. When I open the door, it swings wide and it hits this guy's truck. And I was like, oh, crap. So I close the door. I said, dang, I just hit this guy's truck. So I get out. So here's my cue, right? This is my mental cue. When I did it, he didn't respond, right? I closed the door and I said to the lady, I get out of the car. And I close it. Then he gets out of the car because I think he sees my size. He's bigger than me, right? And the thing on this car, you can't even notice. You can't even see. It's not a thing on his car. Then he gets out of the car. Hey, you just hit my car. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I mean, you need to watch. You shouldn't be hitting people's cars. Like, dude, it's like it's not that thing I do. Go around like, hey, here's a car. Let me go. All right. So he gets all in my face, and he's trying to, dress me down, but it's not working in his favor, right? It's just like nothing he's saying is like facing me. I was like, then I say, okay, so what do you want to do about it? Like, what do you want to do about it? Like, so then my Maria is far more yang than I am. So she gets out of the car and she just eggs it on even more. Are you gonna
Oh,
do something or not? Are you gonna let it go or whatever? He goes, I was like, oh God, okay, babe. All right. So, but at the same token, as soon as he got out of the car, I've already taken note his posture, where
right.
he's, I mean,
Yeah,
how
yeah,
he's kind of a guy that's kind of overweight. His
yeah.
arms are not, so he's big in the front, right? But his arms are about here. So that means he's got to bring his arms around to get to me.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm already with my hands in the front, like, in a
Yeah,
non-threatening
giving it
manner.
the right
But
shove.
yes,
Yeah, yeah,
my goal. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
yeah,
So he's already in the bad position because when he starts his forward motion, it's too late already for him, type thing. I'm
yeah.
not saying that my first punch is going to knock him out, but I've already got the edge in the forward momentum to keep going, type stuff. So all this stuff, right? And I'm saying that, and it went to nothing but words. So then he got basically talked back into his truck, right?
Right.
But here's
Yeah.
the worst part, Rob. Here's the worst part, right? He gets back in his truck. He's still kind of up in arms. Maria's kind of like, still standing out there. And I was like, all right, let me go check on Tony. So I keep walking. I walk straight. I'm telling you, I was such a klutz. As I'm walking, my shoulder hits his mirror. Boom. Oh, fuck. I didn't even turn around, right? I didn't even turn around.
Oh
Like, so I turn
no.
around and look. It's
Oh
all gonna
no.
just like he's like, oh, he did that shit on purpose. I'm like,
Just keep going. Just keep going.
just keep going. And he goes, I hear him out in the truck to Maria. She's still saying that. You see that? He hit my mirror. Did you see? I'm like, so, but and that's the final sum it up, right? So we come back down after my friend. I tell my friend, like, dude, man, you're not gonna believe what's happening. Give him the whole little spill. And he's laughing, he's chuckling. He's like, so we go back down, right? So we come back down. He's a bit bigger than I am, right?
Yeah.
And the guy goes, hey, you can't go hitting the mirrors either. And my friend says, what? He goes, I'm not talking to you. I was talking to him, right?
It's funny how that size thing plays into it so much, isn't it?
It does, yeah. It does. But the whole thing about it is like I use more words, more kind of things. And I think Maria, like after the fact, she did her little counseling session. She's talking to her counselor about like, yeah, I think I was like putting more energy into it. I need to. And Mike is very calm and all this stuff. But
Yeah.
that just goes back to what you were saying about the psychology of things, body language, and awareness and things like that. And I think, what you're saying about Systema, and the relaxation cues that you have in there for yourself. You be able to be ready for something that's going to happen, and the way you carry yourself, and what can happen to be like, because you may get pushed, right?
Sure,
And a lot of folks don't
sure.
even know what to do when they get pushed. And I'm
Yeah.
working on the two young guys, that's why I brought them up. And, the first thing they do, they put their arm down, and I had to learn myself on how to do better break falls, but I don't break my arm falling down.
Yeah.
Like the fight's over already before you even started. So
That really should be one of the very first things that people are taught in any style
and I
is,
only say that
you
because
know,
you mentioned it earlier in the Tai Chi class that you guys never worked on break falls, and we
no,
we did it not until Dave started bringing it on later on into the game.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
what were you gonna say? Yeah,
Yeah, exactly that. Because again, this is part of the self-defense. I always think of self-defense in a very wide term. Uh, so people think fight, but then pre-fight, post-fight, post-fight, there's all sorts of considerations, uh, even to the extent of self-defense in terms of keeping you healthy, right?
right on.
Physically, psychologically, emotionally. Uh, yeah, but those sort of situations are funny. I had a slightly similar thing a little while ago. I was cycling around, a guy stepped out, knocked me off my bike, kind of thing, started shouting at me, really going for it.
Yeah,
And I was saying to Lara, I'd already lined him up. This shoulder was forward, this hand was here, and then he had his wife with him and his kid with him. And I said, oh, I just got on and rode off. But the interesting thing is I felt bad that I hadn't hit him. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? There's still more work to be done. So I held on to that for a little while. So it's interesting. Even we think of ourselves as calm and everything else. There's always that little bit.
It is.
Yeah, just a little. But
It,
where can it lead? It's not going to lead anywhere good, is it?
right on, right on. Like, so we were on a ferry. For us, even worse. So any kind of interaction like that, it's a federal crime. Like being on an aircraft.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're going to jail, right, or something. You're going to end up in the cuffs, right?
exactly. Like, dude, it's not even worth it, you know. So yeah.
But I do think this is interesting because this is another little bugbear of mine. Just while I'm ranting, you give me a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
platform for ranting. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
This fucking thing I see of oh well, Tai Chi's about more than fighting. Yeah. And what sort of person gets into fights all the time? Well, a person who walks around a town or goes on a ferry or is on a plane and there's an arsehole next to him who spills his drink over you, or someone pushes your wife out the way. I mean, a million and one things. It's not like we're going out, all right, we're squaring up to people. But
Right.
stuff
Things happen.
happens. And if these people they crumble even at that first step, if someone looks at them and says something, then what good's all your training?
Right on.
Great, so you can use your Tai Chi to calm and control yourself, can you? Apparently not. Because you see these guys, they get in a ring or something and they take one hit and they're like, what's that? What happened there? Right?
For real.
So you can't fight anything. I mean, you can't, I don't want to say life's a battle, but life comes with lots of challenges. And
Yeah.
one thing we always talk about taking the hits. In fact, we were doing some of this work in France, was about taking the hits in terms of life will give you a hit every day. Might be a small hit, might be like, something really bad happens.
Indeed.
That emotional hit could be far more serious than someone clocking you in the face.
For real. That's true.
Which in turn will leave an emotional hit as well.
Right
So
on.
that's one thing I like about the Systema. They talk about this process of cleaning yourself, because you can be successful in a situation, but you bring some of that away with you and it sits inside you and you say, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that, or da 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 da. No,
Right
you have
on.
to try and leave everything there. Because again, from the professional point of view, what these guys are doing and have had to do, right, you can imagine. So this is something again why they've been using it for PTSD for veterans.
Dude, I was just about to speak on that. Oh,
And it's something I've
literally about
worked
to
in
bring
here.
that up.
I mean, I've got some friends and people with paras and all sorts of stuff, and well, we all need help at times. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
And I found this a great tool for helping people in that sense as well.
Yeah, man. So, and this is backtracking to some stuff you said earlier on, right? So, getting hit creates a trauma, and creates a memory of what it felt like,
Yeah.
what cascade after that. But it goes back to some of the things you said about Mikhail, right? So when you bring your hands up in somebody's face, they know what it feels like to get, if you haven't got poked in the eye, you know what the fear of like being poked in the eye. So you respond sometimes to that reaction, right? And everyone's reaction, because everybody has different attributes. How they respond to that is going to be kind of different. Move to the side, step back, duck down. You know what I mean? But then if you actually had the impact of something like that, that's also going to inform you on how to move, right? It's going to inform you on how to kind of navigate around that. So, PTSD comes in a lot of ways, in regards to the way you're responding to certain things. You had abusive childhood. You haven't had that since you were a kid. Now you're in an environment now where you're learning how to scrap. I'll look at one of the guys, in popular UFC, Sean Strickland, right? He's extremely brutal in his response to fighting. He doesn't like to spar with anybody outside of like fighters. He thinks that's disrespect. You know what I mean? But he's had a very traumatic childhood, and so he sees everything as like, oh man, I got to put on full throttle aggression to deal with this because he's still carrying that on. And
That was very similar to Lenny McLean, who I spoke about earlier, who
yeah,
again, a stepfather, abusive stepfather, and everything else. So every fight he went into, that was who he was fighting. You
got
know.
you. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Now describe him a little bit. He's not the big bald guy, is he? That I'm thinking of. No, that's who is that? No, that's
It,
George. That's Gorgeous George. I'm thinking of. I think.
He was in the film Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. I think what was his character? Barry the Baptist.
Yeah. So yes, yes.
Yeah,
Okay, okay. Yes,
big
yes.
sort of
That's what I'm talking about.
beer-headed
Yes.
man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
If you
Okay.
don't want to be counting the fingers
Yeah.
you haven't got.
That's my dude.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's him.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
YouTube.
Yes.
Yeah, some of his fights are on YouTube and stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I'm familiar with him. Definitely, I'm familiar with him.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was a very interesting local character. My brother had some dealings with him through the DJ thing because he used to run the doors at the Camden Palace, I think it was. My brother
Yes.
was there
Yes.
for. I never really had any association with him, but
That's interesting, man. Yeah, yes. That's funny because now I know exactly who you're talking about. He goes, you hit him in the head and bite him on the ear.
yeah, that's the guy. Yeah. So again, you get into some sort of argument, and that guy gets out the truck, right? Already. But then this is the interesting
you're there patching up the car.
This is then the interesting thing, working with people like Vladimir and some of those guys is how they view people. And one thing they're saying is you don't necessarily take the whole person in. Oh, what a big guy, You start thinking about the mechanics of the body, the knees, the elbows, the tendons, the fingers, all this kind of stuff.
How they walk.
Yeah. So you see where the tension is, you see where the injuries are. Big guys usually in the knee, right? That's going to be rugby player. It's going to be the knee.
Yeah.
You kind of break the person down. Almost, it becomes unpersonal or dispassionate. Then that's more that what they call it's like a professional mindset.
Right on. Right
which,
on.
Again, is a world away from this sort of Krav Maga, full aggression every time for everything.
Exactly.
Different mindset. There's a place for everything.
Right on, man. Yeah, man. This has been fantastic, man. So this is hopefully you permit part one, because also what I want to talk to you about as we go forward, I want to break apart some of these pieces and the mystique within some of your training, specifically certain aspects in your Systema,
Sure.
and then talk about how this branches off into like you mentioned about the psychology of things, but also the practicality of why this was something that was seen as a usage, because for a long time they kept this stuff really kind of to themselves as well, like the Chinese martial arts stuff, and then let go of the mystique of it and start seeing out there. I know people say, oh, so they can make money, but it's more to it than that, because only from my own perspective, right? I know that I use it and it's been very practical for me, and I haven't had to invest a lot of money into it. You know what I mean? So
in terms of, this is another thing I've had, it's all a cult, it's all about money. I pay an admin fee to Vlad, which works out, it's about £8 a month or something,
Yeah.
When I first started teaching for John Ding, I was paying him 80% of what I was earning.
Indeed, right. Different business market right there.
Yeah, it's not that, it's a far different. It's not that pyramid structure thing and all that kind of stuff.
Right on. So yeah, definitely want to pick your brain on that and,
sure.
and some of the other stuff in that regard. But I think right now we touched on a lot of stuff, and I'm over here like this, like beaming with excitement. I can't wait to get this out, then, because this has been really, really fantastic, man. Sorry, and I really appreciate it. Taking some trips down memory lane. There's some other things out there that like Dave said, maybe on this one you could talk about this. He goes, I'll save it for the next time. Like bring up there.
Oh,
so
Dave's
but you brought up the guy
stuff.
about the Chinese guy at the competition, because he had mentioned about that, and I had totally. It had escaped my mind when you brought it up. I was like, "Oh yes, yeah."
Were you there when we went to Utrecht on the ferry from Hull, and there was a big fight in the disco?
Yes, he was talking about. He brought that up to me. He's like, "You remember that?" Yes, I do.
I remember Dave launching someone across the dance floor from the sitting
yes.
position. I'm not sure he even put his. I don't know if he put his cigarette down. Fuck off! The guy went flying. There's proper
Yes,
Fajin. See, when you don't disturb your
yes,
cigarette,
man.
that's a master.
So you know what, man? What I may do, man? If you guys are interested, maybe get both of you guys on at
Oh
once.
yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, that'd
That
be
would be
fun.
great, man. That
Yeah,
would be great. So I think that would be the next one. I'll try to reach out for you guys, try to schedule something for all three of us, and
nice,
then let's chop it up that way, man. That
nice
would be
one.
great. All right,
Well,
Rob, man. I really appreciate it.
thanks for the opportunity to let me ramble on and vent a few things and all that. It's been great, and it's good to see you doing so well and all, Mike. It's great to see
Oh
that.
man, appreciate it, man. And I appreciate all your input over the years too, man. Like you are just impactful as all my other teachers, man. What you brought to the table for me because I carry it around with me, part of my DNA now.
Oh,
So
nice. That's
I
nice.
really appreciate that, man. So thanks a lot for your input, man. For real, for real.
Cheers, sir. Thank
All
you.
right, man. You have a great day, man. I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Cheers, Mike. Take
All
care.
right. All right. Bye bye.